Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Below the Yellow Line. We got a fun list of guests on tap these next few days. This next one, I'm really excited to talk to Mr. Jeremy Mayfield coming on the show today. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing well, doing well. I usually like to let most of our listeners, readers, whoever know about you because of your tenure in racing. But I always like to let guests introduce themselves and kind of give the guest a snapshot of who they are. So without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy Mayfield. Used to drive NASCAR several years, and then kind of pretty much retired there, I guess you'd say. And now I race in the Grand National Series, not full time but part time, and as a hobby. And we just won the Grand National Series championship. So I'm not sure how deep we need to go into it, but other than that, I've been a race car driver my whole life, and it's all I've ever done.
Well, you talk about the Grand National Tour and winning there. Let dive a little deeper into that. That's what you're doing now. Seems like you like doing that. So, what is it like out there on that tour?
It's fun. It's not a national tour. It's more of a kind of a local tour, I guess you'd say, but within a 4 or 5 hour radius of Charlotte, North Carolina, or Mooresville. And we raced it anywhere from Virginia to we raced Alabama last year, Montgomery, Alabama, and all the way to Carteret Speedway, which is on the East Coast, and a lot of tracks around here locally. Pretty much Tri County and Caraway and a lot of those places, but mainly short track racing. And we kind of run what they call a Pro Cup car or an older model Cup car. Pretty much, you can run either one, and it's just a lot of fun. We have a good time racing, and we race usually on Saturday nights. We have two 50 lap races that we run, and then it's over. So it's pretty quick. We get in, we get out, and we don't have pit stops or nothing like that. We just race just like the old short track racing used to be.
Well, that's something I am interested in is when a lot of drivers retire when they leave the national circuit is what do they do in racing afterwards? Because I hear y'all all the time say once you have that racing bug, it sticks with you and you can't. I mean, you can retire if you really want to, but guys like yourself, they race and race and race because they love it so much. So is that something after you left NASCAR, and we'll talk about that of course later on, but after you left NASCAR, was there that bug, that itch that was still there, and you were kind of like, I can't just go sit around, I still have to be behind the wheel?
Oh yeah, I mean it's something I've done my whole life. I started racing when I was like 10 or 11 years old. Started on bicycles and in the go karts. I've raced every year since then, and it's just something I love to do. I got a passion for it, and I like being involved in it, being around it, and certainly like driving. And it's definitely a lot of work. We work a lot of hours doing it. All of us do, and but it's something that pays off. Just getting in victory lane or winning the championship is what it's all about. And um, it's what we do it for. So it's just I guess being competitive and just wanting to win and you're always looking forward to next week. If you have a bad week, you're always looking forward to the next race. And it's just something that it's just a way of life. Really, it's kind of a lifestyle rather than a hobby or a sport.
It is, and most of our listeners, viewers are diehard fans. They know about your career, all those races that you won on your way up the NASCAR ladder. And if you look at our itinerary here, one of the things that I did want to talk about in light of everything going on now in 2024 in the NASCAR world is your experience, your exit from the sport in the late 2000s. Most people know that story. It's been documented by a lot of people. You had a great interview with Dale Earnhardt Jr. I was actually listening to a lot of that in preparation for this. It went really in depth there and had a great chat there. But if you wouldn't mind, and I'm sure you've been asked to recount these years, these experiences to death, but what was it like during that 2008, 2009, 2010 period of your life in your racing career when all of this outside stuff is going on and just I mean I'm sure you're sick of being asked about that, but if you wouldn't mind taking us through that, taking us through that part of your life in your career.
It was something that Shane and I, my wife, we weren't ready for. Obviously, and when something like that hits you, you really just start taking everything one day at a time because it's such big stuff happening and things that we experienced that we never, dreamed of, and just a good, bad, and different, and most of it was bad at that time. And, just every day it seemed like we were getting hit from somewhere with somebody, and we just couldn't get ahead of the, I guess you'd say, the circumstances. We couldn't get ahead of the game there. And so we're constantly, behind as far as, the lawsuit goes to NASCAR and all that stuff. It seemed like it was just an uphill battle constantly. And, when it was all over with, we're just like, glad it's over. Time to move on, and put this behind us and just, see what else is left in life here, and that's where, we had to pick up the pieces and she and I, just moved on from it, and I know it still comes up and it's still part of it, and, I still hear about it every day just about something, and, we deal with it, but it was tough, it's probably one of the toughest things I've ever been through, and certainly, wouldn't want to go through it again or recommend anybody going through that, but, we felt like what was right and what we did. We stood up for what we believed in and fought it all the way to the end, and still today I wouldn't change a thing. It's just what happened, and like you said, you got to believe in something or believe in yourself and know what's right and wrong, and if you can do that and you stand up for it, and hey, everything else just comes along with it, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but at the end of the day, you got to live with yourself, and I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd admitted to something I didn't do, and so I feel like we did the right thing.
Would you mind taking us through? You mentioned that lawsuit, and I'm sure it was an exhaustive process with that, but also just all the conversations that had to be had between you and your family, you and your team. Uh, what was it like when you had to have conversations with the brass of the sport, with those executives in charge? Because that's where a lot of the limelight is now with this lawsuit. A lot of the people are wondering what Jim France is thinking right now as 2311 in front row sue the sport. What were your experiences and conversations like with the sanctioning body at that time?
Well, what's pretty bad is that I never got a chance to speak with the sanctioning body. I talked to a couple lower executives, I guess you'd say, just for a brief moment, and if we could have sat down day one before they made any announcements, before they done anything that they did, we'd have had that worked out and been done and over with. They didn't want to do that. I couldn't talk to Brian France. I couldn't go talk to Jim France. And they just throw it out there into the public. Everything went on, so the damage was done to me already right off the bat. So there was nothing else I could do, and still this day have not sat down with either one of them and talked about it. And that's what sucks. It went straight to the court, and because they didn't want to talk about it, and then that's what happened. And just really it was just a bad situation all the way around. My deal was, and like I said, if we could have talked about it, like you just said, then this would have never happened for me. We'd probably had it worked out, done and over with. Because I said as soon as they called and told me about my test, I failed. I said, I'm sure I did. I was taking Adderall, and I told them that. I did exactly what the policy said, and that wasn't good enough, And I told them I don't even have to keep taking it, I can quit, no problem. No, they didn't want to hear that. So that's where ours led to. And I know that the lawsuit nowadays is going to be a lot different than what mine was for sure. But if they could sit down and talk about their problems, they probably wouldn't be in the situation they're in right now either. It's just, I don't know, it's a weird situation, and it's family owned business, but yeah, when it comes right down to it, you can't talk to anybody in the family. You got to deal with all the, everything underneath that, and then that's just not good. And it's not good for the sport either way, whether my lawsuit or the one they got now, it's not good for it.
Do you feel like that there's been a lot of examples over the years? I mean, going back to the second year of NASCAR, I'm a big NASCAR history buff, and I love looking at aspects of the sport's history from all angles. But 1950, Lee Petty had his all his points stripped midseason. 1961, Curtis Turner and Tim Flock got banned. 1988, Tim Richmond, kind of a similar situation to yours with a drug test that there was some controversy around. Do you feel like there's almost a lack of transparency? Because, like you said, you weren't able to speak to the top brass of the sport when you're going through this major talking point, this major headline for you and NASCAR. Do you feel like there's a lack of transparency, a lack of, I guess, drivers and people in the industry feeling like they're not able to go to the top when they have to plead a case like this?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's everything. And you look back, like you said, Tim Richmond. Um, you go back and look at his lawsuit, and they rigged his test. And they admitted to this. If you go back and look at it, you'll see that they and basically told the drug testing company find something in it or make it a positive test. That's what they did, and then it come back and bit him at the end, but and Tim wasn't able to fight for himself, afterwards because he ends up, passing away. But um, yeah, I mean they're capable of anything, and it's definitely the transparency part isn't there, and they just try to still conduct this image of we're in control. It's our sport. You're playing in our game, and it's going to be our way, and that's it. And that's what's going to happen. That's what you're going to see in this lawsuit coming up here. It's going to be that's hey, if you don't like it, go somewhere else and race, and you can't because they own the racetracks. So you really can't do what we're trying to, what everybody wants to do because you got to deal with that type of attitude, whatever. And instead of being appreciative of Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, having two awesome race teams, or one good big team, with 4 cars or whatever. I mean, that brought a lot to the sport. Michael Jordan did, and for him to do that, then that says a lot right there. And he would have never done that if it had been conducted the right way. So that's the way I see it. When they jump in and file this lawsuit in NASCAR, that should say a lot right there because he wouldn't have done that before. He's brought a lot to this sport, and they certainly didn't appreciate it. And I guess they don't appreciate it now either.
Well, you mentioned, that teams might want to race somewhere else and they can't because NASCAR does on all the tracks. That falls right into what Jeffrey Kessler's case, in the case that he's making, that NASCAR is a monopoly, and you just gave your thoughts on that. So when this news broke it was October 2nd. It was the morning of October 2nd. I remember it vividly. I was sitting in the English class, and of course I got the Twitter notification from Bob Pockris, and of course, 30 minutes later, the NASCAR world's on fire. But what was your initial reaction when you saw this? And did you have, given your experience with the sanctioning body, given your experience in legal cases like this, I'm sure your viewpoint is unique from that of the fans or us, the media. So, what were your initial thoughts when you saw the suit had been filed, and just what do you think of the situation overall?
Well, I've kind of been keeping up with, a little bit of what I was hearing as far as the charters and all this stuff, and NASCAR wouldn't sit down with them, and they wouldn't negotiate, and they wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. So I've been hearing that along the way. So when this broke and I seen it, I was, first of all, I was, I guess you say not happy, but glad to see that somebody uh, was standing up to them because that's the whole problem about this whole sport deal. Everything they do and say is right. It's their way or the highway. And finally, somebody stood up, Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, and said, "That's enough." This had to be coming for years and years and years because everybody out there sees it and everybody knows it. Everybody in the garage area knows all this, but nobody would ever stand up and do it because if you go against them, watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It'll be whether they win the lawsuit or lose the lawsuit, it doesn't matter. They got a long road ahead of them. Jordan and Hamlin, no matter what happens, and it won't be easy. And you'll see a lot of things start happening, and Denny might be lucky to even win another race. That's the way I see it. But he's doing the right thing, and he stood up for what he believes in, and you can't knock anybody for that because they for sure done the right thing. I feel like. And Jordan, it doesn't matter to him. I'm sure it does matter, but he's not one out there driving a race car either. But I'm sure that somewhere down the line he'll feel the consequences either way.
Do you think, somebody mentioned this last night, the news broke that NASCAR is prepared to move on to 2025 once this year's over, of course, which is 32 chartered entries. That means, with Front Row and 2311 not signing the agreement that was proposed to them at Atlanta a few weeks ago, that they'll be open cars next year. And somebody brought this up on social media earlier. Tyler Reddick this year in the 45 team, they could win the championship, and then there is a chance they could miss the Daytona 500 next year because that's just the situation that they're in right now of not signing this agreement. If you had to give any advice right now to Bob Jenkins, the folks at Front Row, Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, Curtis Polk, the folks at 2311, is there anything you would say? Do you feel you have experience in a matter like this where you maybe know the right thing to say? What would you tell them if you were able to sit down in a boardroom with them and say, hey guys, this is maybe the way to go from here?
Well, I don't know what I'd say because their deal's totally different than what mine was, but I do know this is if you're expecting the justice system or the legal system to do the right thing, and which is what it should do. If they do that, then they got they got a cases won, on their side. But it's not going to happen like that, and just be aware of that. That'd be my advice would be it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen, the way the justice system should work, because they got a lot of ties and they got a lot of, I know Michael does too, but there's just a lot of things that happen in this world, and politics wise, and as Brian France would say, the long arm of the law. Sometimes it's on your side, and you don't realize until you're way deep into the whole situation before you realize, wait a minute, I got to do something different here because it's not working exactly the way it should be working. But that's stuff you're going to have to deal with when you go up against NASCAR. It's a lot of things going to head your way that you're not expecting, and just keep an eye out for it.
Well, that is a good point that you make. That
Yeah.
regardless of the way this goes, I think in the courts, that's something a lot of people have brought up. Is will NASCAR almost accept that? And you mentioned earlier, Denny Hamlin might be lucky to win another race, and there is
Right.
sort of that speculation. And I know conspiracy theorists out there have a field day every time somebody gets disqualified. You see it after Alex Bowman got disqualified this weekend. The tinfoil hats are already out there in full force regarding Hendrick Motorsports and whatnot. But I think there is going to be a lot more scrutiny, and I can't speak for what NASCAR officials are told or not or what they see. But I think there certainly is every time that 11, that 45, that 23, if they expand to a third car next year, is the rumor to, every time those cars roll through inspection, every time they're pushed out to the grid, whether it be from NASCAR, whether it be from the fans because of this lawsuit, there are going to be more eyes on it. And I think you're right in that because it's happened before, and it's not necessarily in situations like this, but whenever a team, whenever Bill Elliott and that team based out of a little shop in Georgia was dominating in the late 1980s, there was more scrutiny placed on that car when it rolled through tech inspection. And it was the same thing with Jeff Gordon and Hendrick Motorsports in the mid 90s when they were whipping everybody week in and week out. There is going to be more scrutiny around that, whether it's by the fans or by the sanctioning body. I think you're right that there are going to be more eyes on that, and unfortunately, in this case, for the wrong reasons. But
Right, exactly, and that's I just read today about NASCAR's not going to play. They're going to play hardball or whatever hypocrisy somebody said today. I forgot what it was. They're not going to play whatever it was, however you worded it. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's no matter whether they win the lawsuit or don't win the lawsuit, this is still going to be a long-term deal that's going to affect a lot of people on that race team. Denny and Jordan's team that will be seen for a long time, no matter what.
Yeah.
And because they bucked the system, they went against the grain, and they stood up for what was right and what they believed in, and went against NASCAR. And you're just not supposed to do that, and everybody knows that. And I'm not saying anything that nobody in that garage area hadn't already said before. They just won't say it to the media. They won't say it to the public because everybody's scared.
Yep.
There's not too many people out there that'll just tell you like it is and file a lawsuit like they did. So that's pretty ballsy, and my hat's off to them because that's what it takes, and you gotta make a change, you gotta make a stand, and by doing that, you better be ready,
Yeah. Last question here. I do want to take a step back and realize that aside from this lawsuit, there are some good things happening out there on the racetracks. We got the playoffs going on and a championship to decide here over these last 4 weeks of the season. Been some good racing as of late. When you look back on the sport as somebody that raced in it in the 90s, the early 2000s, what historians are now calling and myself personally believes is the so-called golden age of NASCAR, when it was the most popular when it was the most popular when it was at its peak. When you look at NASCAR as a whole, when you look at officiating, the sanctioning body, the racing product, the next generation race car, what do you make? What is Jeremy Mayfield's state of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing in October of 2024?
Yeah, I'm not very fond of it. All you gotta do is look back. If you go back and look at, let's say, the golden years, whatever you're talking about, just go back and watch some of those races. 07, 06, 05, 2000, 98, 97. I mean, all those years. The racing was awesome. The show was good. They had superstars. They had brands. Rusty Wallace, Miller Lite, Dale Earnhardt was Jim Goodrich. You know all that stuff, and you see it. And when you see the black number 3, you don't have to ask who it is. You know who it is. All right, now watch today, and you watch these cars around. You don't have a damn clue who's driving what. They're all mixed up. They got a bunch of different sponsors on them every week. They're not the same. It's just as far as that goes, that side of it. But then you look at, okay, well, who can be the superstars? All right, we got Chase Elliott, and whoever else, Kyle Busch, but that's still not a Dale Earnhardt, a Rusty Wallace, Darrell Waltrip, Gale Yarborough. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, them two are, but there's not enough of them in there.
Yeah, I
start
agree.
with, it seems like, and I don't know how they get to that point where they are, but they've alienated their fans who related to Dale Earnhardt and Bill Elliott. Rusty Wallace, Darrell Waltrip. There's a lot of fans that are used to relate to those guys. Look up to them, and now you got seems like a younger bunch of group of guys in there that there's not a lot of the older fans that have been around. They don't really care about that. They're not going to pull for a guy who they don't think is somebody that they look up to. And it's hard for them to look up to somebody that's 22 years old or whatever. And I use this example a lot, but you take NFL football. All right, just imagine right now if you took the NFL and you pulled all the players out over the winter and you put high school football players in their spots. And now go and start Monday Night Football just like you normally do this season. And you're not going to have very many fans very long because none of your superstars are playing, and it's a bunch of young guys who just come out of high school, pretty much. And what's the show going to be? It's going to be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden people are not going to show up. People are not going to watch. Then you start changing all these rules, trying to make a better football game out of it. You change the footballs. You put different breaks in there. And you make them change their jerseys 3 times. And if this guy does this, he's disqualified. And if this guy does this, he's disqualified. And now you change the goalpost, narrow it up a little bit, and you start making all these changes to make your show better, and you've done nothing to screw it all up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where they're at. And that's just my opinion, and but I feel like that's where they're at right now. And how you get that back, they won't never get it back because there's nobody at the top wants to hear what's really wrong. Nobody says what's really wrong within that organization.
Yeah.
Because they all tell each other how great everything is all the time because they got $1 billion contract. Well, you got $1 billion contract in. Well, we must be doing something right. Okay, continue down that road, and one day that $1 billion contract won't be there anymore.
Yeah.
And that's probably sooner than later. And it just continues on. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm 110% wrong. I hope I am, and I hope somebody can tell me that. But that's just the way I see it.
Well, it's always interesting to me. I mean, I was born in 2006, when that golden age of the sport was kind of ending. I became a fan around 2012, 2013 when it was still dwindling out. But I do realize, I recognize the difference now, especially as a member of the media. I was in Chicago, I was covering the Chicago street race, and you would see Kyle Larson, who's the championship favorite, arguably the best driver in the sport. He was walking down the streets of Chicago because to get to the media center, you just walk down the city street. That's how you got to the media center that weekend. And there was, he's wearing a bright blue HendrickCars.com fire suit, and nobody really stopped him. Nobody wanted an autograph. Kyle Busch comes walking down the street to so we can do interviews with him, and nobody recognizes him. Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, I mean, the defending champ, guys that are perennial contenders, and that is a big difference that you mentioned. I do think there is kind of that lack of superstardom. And I did want to mention Chicago because NASCAR's in an interesting place right now, I think, where they're making a lot of new changes. They're going to new markets. They're going to Mexico City, St. Louis, all these places. And the Charlotte Roval's been a new thing. How do you think their balance is of making those or going to new markets, trying to do things to bring in that fresh fan base while also trying to keep that old fan base? Because to their credit, I think they've made some decent moves in that regard. They brought back Wilkesboro. They brought back the Madhouse at Bowman Gray. And they made a couple other changes in that regard, really hyping up the history of the sport with the whole NASCAR 75 initiative. Where do you think they are on meeting that balance, or do you think they need to meet that balance at all of bringing in a fresh crop of fans and keeping that diehard breed that still tunes in every week?
Well, there's 2 or 3 different answers to that because you look at North Wilkesboro. Okay, they brought North Wilkesboro back. Okay, yeah, but guess what they brought back? They brought back their new show. a brand new show. And guess what? It did for North Wilkesboro. Wasn't very good racing, was it? Terrible show. But that's it. They were hoping Wilkesboro would be the same old Wilkesboro used to be when we always used to go to a race. It was a hell of a show. Now you bring your new show years later after you open the track back up, and you got the track looking great in the best situation it's ever been in, and you bring this new type of racing to there, and what it do? Boring. Everyone else has been boring. And then you talk about fan bases, okay? They got the biggest, brightest star you can get, Michael Jordan. I mean, everybody knows Michael Jordan. Everybody understands what he's done. It's just there's no actor that doesn't know him. So you get him involved in the sport. Now you got a guy really interested in it, showing up at races, on pit road, got his headsets on, watching races, really into it. And look at his fan base he's got. Huge, right?
Yep.
Okay, so now you're getting all these fans. You got a fan base that you never would have had before. You got the top superstar in the world, Michael Jordan, sitting at your racetrack, very interested, owns a team, and you piss him off.
Yep.
Now what do you do? You know what I mean? You got a racetrack in Wilkesboro. You tried that, and you watch what I'm telling you right now. They're going to go to the madhouse, and racing's going to be out of control there, and all these out there is by a bunch of race fans. That's got the biggest short track fans in the whole country right there. If you can't go there and have the place packed or sold out, something's wrong. They're selling out with modified races every week, every Saturday night. So yeah, that's going to look great. It's going to be good. But watch when they bring the new show there. Let's see what happens with the actual race itself.
Yeah.
And they can't just keep pissing everybody off. And that's what they've done. They've done a lot of it.